Welcome. My name is Adam Reck. I'm here with two good friends of mine, Krista Boan and Riley Roberts. And we're here just to kind of introduce as Colonial's doing, we're entering into the citywide digital fast and to talk about how this affects families, parents, students, kids, and just to really encourage parents and families to embrace this time and just the benefits that taking some time away from screen, having intentional time with each other as family, intentional time with the Lord as we reduce our screen usage, being able to fill that with more just intentional time with God and with family and everything. And so, I just know in my own personal life, in our own family, Chris and I, we've done some things in just helping families. I've been blessed to be a part of the resources that you've helped produce. And every time I have questions, you're kind of the person I go to and everything. And so just even using that, we, as a family, we have times where we, at tables, at bedtimes, on trips, we have intentional time where it's like, okay, we're going to put devices down and everything. And just, it's the thing where the kids are like, being a youth pastor, you understand this of like it's begrudging, but eventually as they get into it, they start to realize the joy. And I'm sure like I love how Colonial, like the youth ministry there, if it's mission trips, camps, there's don't bring your phone. Or if you bring your phone, we're going to collect them. And once again, it's begrudging. But then like after it's all over, like they talk about how great it was and everything. And so, Krista, you've been on this journey for several years, and you were the first person when I was doing youth ministry, and I would have parents talk to me about, what age should they get their kid a cell phone. And, I would say, I work primarily with middle school. And so I would say, usually not till high school. And then the next year was, well, probably not till 8th grade. And the next year was 7th grade. And it just seemed like it was getting lower and lower. And I could see, we were having, parents were talking about trouble with now, access to pornography and stuff over phones. And I was still teaching about like your internet filters on your computer, not even thinking about smartphones and everything. And so you were really the first person that had some solutions and everything. So talk about that journey and just kind of what you've learned through the years.
Yeah. Well, I don't know at what point we ended up connecting, but I definitely didn't have solutions when I started my journey.
You faked it well.
Yeah. Well, maybe I'd had a few years of other people pouring into me under my belt, but my story really begins about 7 years ago when my oldest daughter was in 5th grade. And at that time, the hot Christmas gift that every kid was asking for at top of their list was a smartphone.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just remember feeling a lot of pressure to get her one because I was hearing that they were being used in schools. I didn't want her to be left out from parties or group texts or any of the social things that were happening. And yet I felt nervous and scared because it was uncharted territory for me. And I didn't know what I was doing. And that's really common in parenthood. And so I did what I've always done as a parent, which is I resourced the parents just one step ahead of me in parenthood, right? And I said, how are you managing this? How did you get this right with your kid when you gave them their first smartphone? And I kind of expected them to, smile and just, oh, honey, it's going to be okay. And pat me on the back and, they'll sleep through the night eventually. This isn't going to last forever. And just expected to receive a lot of reassurance. But instead, I really received a very different reaction. And that was, parents would just kind of, their eyes would drop and you could see their shoulders shrink and they would step back and say, I'm sorry, but I don't have the answers for you on this one because it's not really going well in my home. And so if there's anything that you can do differently, do it because this is really challenging and I just don't know what to tell you. And so that began a conversation in the Kansas City community with a couple of co-founders. Brenda Walden is a member of this church and really began to gather people together to say, how are we navigating this new territory? Because raising kids in a digital world is nothing that any other generation has ever had to do, right?
Yeah.
We are the first generation of parents who have kids who would rather text than talk, right? And we can't call our grandma or our parents and say, what did you do when your toddler was melting down because they couldn't have their iPad in Target, right? There's no wisdom being handed down through the ages. We ended up becoming the wisdom makers. And so that kind of birthed an organization, a nonprofit organization that developed resources. We took anybody who was willing to share wisdom about how they were navigating these new challenges in the digital world, and we just kind of crowdsourced them and put them together into a training, parent training, and other resources to help parents become mentors and guides to their kids in the digital world. And so that was the birth of Screen Sanity. And those resources are now an international resource and helping a lot of families around the world. But what's interesting is, Adam, when we first began our work, we got to do some podcasts together. We not only got to create resources together, but we got to learn through our mistakes together. Yes. And that's a beautiful gift of a lot of the resources that we've created. But if you think about the landscape now versus the landscape 7 years ago, so many things have changed. Back then we didn't have starter phones. The only option was to hand your kid a fully loaded smartphone. And now there are other products out there. There are better filtering. There's better monitoring solutions for families. But that's not the only thing that's changed. Another thing that's changed is that we now have data that shows the link between increased unchecked, unhealthy screen use and the escalated mental health crisis. And so before 7 years ago, we thought, I'm not sure about giving my kid a smartphone, but surely the benefits outweigh the costs, right? Because there are so many wonderful things about technology, and technology is a gift. It's appropriate for us to be thankful for it. But in the past 7 years, we now have data that does show a link to increased depression, anxiety, and suicide for our teenagers. Just a couple years ago, there was a stat came out that said 60% of American high schoolers report feeling persistently sad and hopeless, which, Riley, you've probably been on the front lines of that as well. Of those 60%, 30% of American females report having considered suicide. And so this level of teenage isolation and depression is unprecedented to the level that many of our American teenagers, actually it's across Western cultures is the data, but they are feeling higher levels of loneliness than even the nation's elderly. And so, so we have data now that shows us and compels us that, 7 years ago, we didn't know what we didn't know. We just did our best. But now we know better. And so it's time for us to do better. And that's created a ripple effect in society where we're starting to see task forces at the local and state level looking at schools and the use of technology in schools, creating phone-free environments at school, as well as reevaluating the role that technology is playing in learning for our kids, and beginning to ask different questions than we asked 7 years ago, more about like, what did we give up when we thought we were gaining so much? And then the other thing is just, we're seeing really young parents who have had a heads up, and they're like, I'm watching the kids 10 years ahead of me, and I'm seeing that that's not going well, and I want to do things differently. And we're seeing young parents really ready to roll up their sleeves and think intentionally about technology. So it's a really exciting moment for us as the church to just step into the conversation, because in so many ways we have the ultimate solution that the rest of the world can't offer for disconnection and for hopelessness, right? We have the gospel. And so really, when we step into this conversation about how are we rethinking technology, how are we creating new spaces for connection and for health in every space that we walk into, we're really asking, how can we create room for the gospel to go out and to be shared and to take root in the next generation, but also in our own lives. Yeah. So some exciting momentum.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. And my question, as I think about us as a church, like taking on this this fast. And you know, I think what's important is it's not a, you know, you can't be on your phone, you can't be on screens at all. Like it's not a, you know, all or nothing.
Right.
It's a just being intentional and trying to be on less.
Yeah.
And so we're in the summer, and you've got kids are out of school, so parents have them at home and everything. And so maybe the idea of limiting screen time is starting to, you know, cause some palpitations and everything. What are some ideas or resources that parents could use and think of to kind of help kids to disengage and just to kind of pivot into a different direction?
Yeah, there's some awesome resources I think that we're going to be able to have available on our website for families who are looking for just ideas. But I think the biggest thing is just to really try to get ahead of the conversation. I'm not sure when this is airing, but if we can not call our kids away from something with a slap on the wrist, like they're doing something wrong. But if we can cast a vision for something better, and if we can create a vision or talk about what our family values are and what do we want to be about this summer? God's given us this time. Like, how are we going to pursue the things that God wants for us? And then what role can screens play either in supporting the things that maybe we're going to use a sign up genius to take somebody a meal who's just had surgery or something like that. But also, what ways are screens hindering or disrupting our family's values, like the things that we want most? And so getting ahead of those conversations and preparing for transitions. Transitions are a big deal. And so really setting yourself up with good expectations for the summer is going to be like 90% of the battle, right? And getting buy-in and not just saying, you're going to be in trouble if you do this. Because guess what? When we say that, we have to take a hard look at our own technology habits. And that's the other thing I would say for summer is our kids are around us a lot more during the summer. And so that is a prime opportunity to live out and to reevaluate your own relationship with technology, not only from a am I using it too much standpoint, but also like, what types of things am I using it for? Am I just mindlessly scrolling on social media? Or am I actually like thinking about how to write a letter to maybe somebody who's older and needs to hear an encouraging word? Or and then instead of just assuming that our kids are going to pick up on the way that we're using technology, really trying to think intentionally about narrating what we are doing on our phones for our kids. So this is how they learn. They don't learn by just, if we put the screen in front of us, they can make up a million stories about what's going on our phone. But if we put the screen in front of us and we say, all right, we're going to have a family dinner tonight, but we have no eggs. So I'm adding eggs to my grocery list. Does anybody else need me to add anything to the grocery list? If we are telling them what we are doing, then we are building an internal scaffolding for them. And that scaffolding is the same scaffolding they're going to use to evaluate their own relationship with technology. So just really intentionality, getting ahead, and communicating expectations and values and goals and a vision for your summer, but then also authenticity and honesty, because the last thing our kids need to hear is that, we expect you to do this perfectly, because guess what? That doesn't line up with our own behavior. So it's coming back to our kids when we've ignored them or when we've like done something where it's been harmful to them, and saying, you know what? I actually didn't need to be on my phone right then. And I realized I'm realizing I was just numbing out because of something painful that's happened to me. Will you give me a do-over? Will you give me a do-over? I'm going to put my phone down and I just want to hear about you today. Or let's read a book, crawl on my lap, and let's spend some time just in each other's presence. Or have we prayed together today? So just taking those moments to be really just honest and vulnerable about the struggle that we're all in, because we're all in it together. It's not just our kids. And in fact, if you ask our kids, I think that they would probably be quicker to be able to point out all of the ways that we misuse technology, right? Than they do.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you.
That'll preach.
Yeah.
Dang, that was great.
Right,
Sorry. I hope that makes it in there.
Yeah.
Riley, you've seen this in teenagers, and they have a lot more autonomy with their phone use and everything. And so just kind of talk about what you've seen, and just even students being able to self-regulate, or just even in how you've been able to help them navigate these issues.
Yeah, I would say I myself have struggled with technology. I remember Instagram came out like right when I was in middle school. And so I was kind of at the start of social media kind of becoming a thing. Like I remember like turning 13 and being like, okay, I'm old enough to get Facebook. Like I can't wait for this. And so I just remember in my teenage years struggling with it. That's kind of when it all really started. And I got a smartphone in my ninth grade year. And I would say some of my biggest struggles around social media have been through comparison and through envy of seeing people on the screen, seeing my friends being like, man, I wish I looked like that. Man, I wish I had that, or X, Y, or Z. And I see a lot of those same struggles that our students have as well of, some of the students not wanting to post a certain photo because they don't like how their arm looks, or wanting to only post this photo because they have 5 friends in it rather than just 2 friends, or deleting a post if it doesn't get over 100 likes. Like I see these things that I myself have struggled with. And so I think that's where my passion around wanting to support them and, do this digital fast has come from. And, I was telling Krista this a couple months ago, but Instagram actually has a limit on the number of times you can deactivate your account in like a certain number of days. And I'm one of those people who am a serial deactivator to the point where like they limit me. They're like, hey, you've deactivated this way too many times in the last month. You can't do it. And so I recognize my own struggle, and I want to, as a youth worker, I want to set the example for them. And so I recognize that, I'm struggling in some ways with it. And so therefore, I'm going to, limit the number of people I follow. So, like, I'm not following certain people that are going to cause me to envy, or I'm going to.
I noticed she stopped following me.
Exactly. It's the hair. I really wanted the hair. I took off, I hid the like count. Like, I don't see, who likes my photos. I can't see who's liked other people's photos. I limit my phone use before bed. Just different things. Like if I'm, modeling it for the students, hoping that sets a good example for them. And a big thing that we do within the youth ministry is any trip we go on, we take away phones. Yeah. And it always is kind of a point of contention, I guess, at the beginning of the week, because they always throw a big fit. Like, are you kidding me? Like, why do I have to give up my phone? Like, I'm going to lose my Snapchat streak. But then without fail, by the end of the week, it's always, hey, can you keep my phone? Like, I don't want it back. Like, I'm having a really fun time connecting with my friends. And it's like, man, like, that is awesome. And so that's just one way that we've really, tried to be very, proactive with our phone use. This year, we also went back to opening up the physical Bible. We used to let students in small groups use their phones to look up passages, and come to find out some of the students couldn't even figure out where in the Bible John was. And it's like, man, that's not okay. So we went back to using a physical Bible, which has been super helpful. We have a phone bucket in each room. So during small group time, the expectation is every student put their phone in the phone bucket. And so then you are completely present with your small group. And man, we've just seen great success with that, of just students being connected with one another. Just deeper connections being formed and being able to grow closer with the Lord. And I think our student leaders have just knocked it out of the park, like really setting that example as well, which has been cool.
Yeah. Riley, I have a question. When you guys implemented the phone-free boxes and you started asking kids to not have their phones out and kind of create a sacred space at the lighthouse, I noticed you guys had to give something up in order to do that. Like, I think anytime we make changes, we have to be willing to like give things up. One of the things I noticed you guys had to give up was asking kids to scan QR codes. And so what I really appreciate and have loved about your leadership is that you've been really reflective about ways that like you could accidentally be putting other people in a double bind. And we all do this with other people, right? Like sometimes I feel like I have to be on my phone all the time because my husband needs access to me, right? But like we've gotten to where like he can give me permission to say, hey, I know you're being present with people right now. I actually don't need access to you, but you guys have done that. And I know that it always takes a sacrifice for us whenever we're trying to create change, but there have probably been other things that you've had to give up in order to create that change over there, but it's been really remarkable.
Well, and I love what you said, like it is a sacrifice. Things that, require work, require effort, things that are, worth it are going to require you to sacrifice something. And so, it did require us to kind of shift some of our programming, but it's a worthy sacrifice for what we've received. And so I think just my encouragement to families is like, yes, we know that we're asking more of you, but it's going to be worth it. Like the end results are going to be beneficial for you and your family.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. I think one of the things with, you talk about during the trips or when they come to the lighthouse, having them, they have to put their phones away. They can't be on their phones and everything. And I know, I remember one time with Screen Sanity, just thinking, you got to release this like to the world, and you can make a lot of money and all that. But you were very intentional about like, we want to put this in. We go to schools, we go to like communities because there's shared. It's almost like that FOMO of if you're the only one doing it, then it's so much harder because it's like I can't be the only one missing out. And so what I really love about the citywide, this church-wide digital fast is we're taking it on as a community. And so we can, we can commiserate with other parents of like, it's been a battle. How are you doing? It's, and we can also commiserate about like, it's been a battle for me internally. Like I want to play some Candy Crush right now, but I'm trying to be more intentional and everything. And so I really appreciate just the many churches in the city coming together to do this. I appreciate Colonial and Colonial members coming to do this. And once again, it's not about who can cut out the most hours and whatnot. It's more about just just having moments where we're more intentional, where we're more aware of what we're doing and how we're using our phones and everything.
Yeah, just little tiny tests sometimes can create great change. And that's not where you have to start, but just by testing a tiny thing, it can give you the space to be curious about what might you try next, right?
Yeah.
It's like, don't set out to just do 50 push-ups, do one push-up first, right? And just, I love that.
And Colonial has lots of tools and encouragement. We talked about different things that parents can do to replace screen time and whatnot. And there's going to be more episodes of different podcasts talking about different ways. And so, anybody can visit colonialkc.org/digitalfast to learn more, get those resources, and join the movement. And so, kind of the theme is like, don't fear the fast. Embrace it. And with that, just being able to, you might be surprised at what you gain from disconnecting.